It is very often said that flexibility, pragmatism, and innovation are the three pillars on which the United Arab Emirates has based its revamped foreign policy. Many instances are available that prove this transformation, and it was recently in full view at the United Nations. Hi and welcome to TFI Global, the foreign affairs and geopolitical analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. I'm the group founder Atul Mishra, and in this video I will tell you why UAE abstained from voting against Russia in the UN. Let's begin. The United Arab Emirates abstained from voting on a UN resolution condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. For many seasonal Western analysts, this development came as a surprise. While India and China have considerable relations with Russia, the vote from UAE came out of nowhere. However, for anyone who has been following our reporting and closely monitoring UAE, this was an obvious choice. Hey, it's me Atul. I started this channel. We started small, we went big. Suddenly, the Whitey police was after us. We dodged and ducked, but the algos got us really bad. So we designed our own app. It's free. We never asked for money, we never will. But the droid called us too sensitive and blocked us. We still have an Apple app. Join us and fast, because if you don't, we will cease to exist. Check out the link in the description. The declining importance of the US under the disastrous leadership of Joe Biden in the Middle East has made Washington lose many of its allies. For the longest time, Russia has been the only stabilizer in the region, and the UAE is very well aware of the same. Since the Arab Spring, UAE is well aware of the fragility of order in the region, and with Joe Biden abandoning its allies, closer cooperation with Moscow is the best option. After mediating the Abraham Accord between Israel and the UAE, Trump took the US-UAE relations one step further by finalizing an agreement to sell fifth-generation aircraft to the UAE. However, as soon as Joe Biden came to power, he started bullying its own allies. Why, you ask? Well, because they cooperated with Donald Trump. An angered UAE paused talks on a $23 billion contract to buy 50 F-35 fighter jets following the USA's warning of scrapping the deal. Instead, the UAE placed an order of 80 Rafale fighter jets, strengthening economic and diplomatic ties with France through a $19.20 billion arms deal. The weapons order from France was a part of the larger change in UAE's policy. UAE decided to move entirely away from depending on the US to diversify its weapons imports and thereby increasing its strategic autonomy. Washington has been withdrawing from the Middle East and North African region steadily, and this has created a vacuum. Most Arab powers, especially the UAE, find this vacuum extremely concerning. The USA's retreat emboldens not just Iran, but also accompanying destabilizing factors and thereby increasing the possibility of regime change civil wars. And so countries in the region feel a need to look for alternative options. An illustration of America's flawed Middle East policy is its intervention in Syria. Timber Sycamore was initiated by the CIA to depose Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, but it was defeated by the Russian intervention. Russia prevented the United States from committing yet another historical blunder, which could have resulted in the plowing of Syrian soil to produce Islamist movements. Now, the Middle East is increasingly tilting towards Russia. Against this backdrop, Russia-UAE relations are developing in a positive direction. If we take the case of Ethiopia, things become absolutely clear. The Biden administration has further hinted at a direct intervention accusing Ethiopia of human rights abuses. However, UAE, an American ally, is now supporting the Ethiopian government in its fight against the TPLF. When it comes to Russia, it commands tremendous respect in Ethiopia. In fact, such is the admiration for Russia in the African nation that its citizens regularly wave the Russian flag on the streets. In the larger Horn of Africa region as well, Russia and UAE find their interests converging. In line with this, on Wednesday, just hours before Putin announced the start of military operations against Ukraine, UAE Foreign Minister Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan called for strengthening ties and deepening cooperation in a call with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov. Sheikh Abdullah announced hours before the vote on Friday that he would visit Moscow on Monday to strengthen bilateral ties. Considering all these factors, it is clear that UAE understands that for securing its interests, Russia is more important than an increasingly unreliable America under Joe Biden.